I'm Kai Rizdal. It is Thursday. Today, this one is the 27th of February. Good as always to have you along, everybody. We measure this economy, as you know, within an inch of its metaphorical life. Those measurements come in varying degrees of importance. And today we got a biggie, gross domestic product, how much this economy grew in the fourth quarter of last year. 2.3% on an annualized basis, exactly in line with expectations, although to be clear, a bit slower than third quarter growth. We also got this morning, courtesy of the Commerce Department, orders for durable goods, stuff that's supposed to last 3 years or more. Those orders were up in January. And when you set aside the always volatile and very expensive categories of defense and airplanes, orders for capital equipment were up almost 1%. That's the third monthly increase in a row. And as Marketplace's Justin Ho reports, those orders can shed some light on how businesses are thinking about things in this economy.
A big reason economists pay attention to durable goods orders is because an order today can be a leading indicator.
An order captures the demand for goods that will get produced and later shipped.
That's Bernard Yaros, lead U.S. economist at Oxford Economics. He says a pickup in orders is a good sign for the manufacturers that make durable goods and the companies that buy them. That's because investing in equipment can help those companies boost productivity.
Especially if this equipment is being put to use to save on labor, to have more output.
One reason equipment orders have been rising is because spending on advanced manufacturing facilities has skyrocketed in recent years, says Chris Varvaris, senior advisor at KPMG Economics.
These could be chip manufacturing facilities, electric battery facilities, electric vehicle facilities.
And now that many of these facilities have been built,
the next step in this process would be to order and build the machines that go into these buildings to produce what they were intended to produce.
But Varvaris says there's another reason businesses have been ordering new equipment. They're nervous about tariffs, which could make that equipment more expensive. After all, equipment manufacturers in the U.S. rely on imported components and raw materials.
And since many of these are subject to pretty sharp increases in tariffs that will add to the cost of these capital goods, many firms are wanting to get these in place ahead of the tariffs.
In South San Francisco, Greg Warwick, CEO of the equipment supplier TMB Baking, says many of his customers aren't sure whether they should buy equipment ahead of any potential tariffs.
It's causing some apprehension. Some of them are moving forward more quickly. Others are waiting, a wait and see.
And even though some customers are buying equipment now, Warwick says his company doesn't feel comfortable, say, investing in new inventory or expanding.
We're just being conservative right now in terms of our spending as a result of some of that uncertainty.
In other words, the recent pickup in durable goods orders might not be a good sign about where the economy's headed. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Wall Street today. Well, look, we could tell you and we will, but you might wish we hadn't. Details, numbers, I'm going to guess the sad music when we get there. There's a certain kind of economic data point that usually gets noted, it gets filed away someplace, and then everybody largely moves on. I'm thinking here of indicators that are notoriously volatile. They bounce around a lot. First among equals of which is the weekly data on first-time claims for unemployment benefits. We talked about them a lot in the early days of the pandemic. Lately, though, in more normal times, not so much. But we did learn this morning that 242,000 people filed first-time claims this past week. That's an increase of 22,000, which is a lot. Again, notoriously volatile, so there's only so much that data point can tell us. But if you take it alongside everything else that's happening in this economy, it does tell us something. Marketplace's Samantha Fields has that one.
The labor market started off this year strong with a low unemployment rate of 4%.
And it had been at or below 4.2% for 39 months. Like the last time unemployment was that low for that long was in the 1960s.
Heidi Shearholtz at the Economic Policy Institute says as of this January, the whole economy was strong. And on its own, this week's bump in unemployment claims isn't really something to worry about.
But many data sources are now starting to flash yellow. Some are even starting to flash red. Stock markets are down, bonds are down, consumer sentiment is down, inflation expectations are way up. All of those are going in the wrong direction.
And looking at the bump in weekly unemployment claims in that context does give her pause. Andrew Stettner, too.
The butterflies are there.
Stettner's at the Century Foundation, and he says the labor market has been key to the economy's recent strength.
So we're really looking closely to see if there's any signs of weakness.
Hiring has slowed. That's been showing up in recent data. But are more people losing their jobs?
Right now, the big assault on the labor market are these unprecedented federal layoffs.
But most federal employees who've lost their jobs recently are not counted in this weekly jobless claims number.
And the fact that we're seeing unemployment claims start to go up even before we feel the impact of the federal layoffs, that's a big concern for me.
In general, the labor market still looks solid overall, says Gregory Dacko at EY. But all the policy uncertainty in Washington right now is a real concern.
If business leaders start to adopt a wait-and-see approach, given all the unknowns regarding immigration policy, regarding trade policy, regarding tax policy, that will weigh on the labor market.
And ripple through to consumer spending, too. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
One reports on tariff policy in this economy right now, at one's own peril, changing daily as it does. But as of right now, and this was indeed confirmed today by the President of these United States, 25% import taxes, which are paid by consumers. 25% import taxes go into effect on all imports from Canada and Mexico on Tuesday, March the 4th. That same day, the 10% tariff on all Chinese imports that went into effect earlier this month is going to double. So we went straight to our source for what this means out in the actual economy. Gretchen Blau is our customs broker at Logistics Plus in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Well, it's been a little confusing for our customers, a little confusing for us as well. Things seem to be changing on a daily basis. We rely mostly on news sites to give us updates. We had one of our team visiting in Mexico, giving us real-time updates from down there, but not an awful lot on the government websites, which makes it a challenge to actually prove to some importers and other forwarders with whom we work that, you know, this is official stuff. So that's been quite a frustration there. I have a lot of alerts on, all the news services I subscribe to on my phone, and then end up sending that to the ops team and our marketing team so that they can pass it along to their customers. And it's a lot. I walked into someone's office yesterday, and she was like, "And what news are you bringing me today?" Like, what's going to affect us now? We've had customers that have been importing since the beginning of the year, probably more than they normally would in order to keep stuff in inventory, and then looking for regular warehousing to keep those goods here in the U.S. so that they are available in case this, the tariffs with Mexico and Canada happened, and it looks like they are going to on March 4th. We've had a disclaimer on our emails. Just, we're giving you an estimate of what's in effect for today, and it could change at any time, and that's beyond our control. A lot of importers are frustrated because they're trying to plan for their summer construction projects, as an example, and they don't really know what tariffs are going to be in place at that point. So it's a little hard to do pricing. we're just being really flexible, being able to pivot whenever necessary. We do expect to stay really busy, especially we're ramping up for, a lot of construction and whatnot. So we're constantly going to be answering questions, telling people, this is what the duty rate is now. Here's your new landed cost as opposed to what you were probably planning at this point last year.
Changing every day. Gretchen Blau, Customs Brokerage Manager at Logistics Plus in Erie, PA. The last big destructive wildfire that we had out here in Southern California, the Woolsey Fire in Malibu, was more than 6 years ago. And most of the homes that burned back then have yet to be rebuilt. Local officials know that's a problem, a big one, which is why they fast-tracked the permitting process after Altadena and the Palisades burned to get people back into their homes faster. But as Marketplace's Kaylee Wells reports, in the long run, some of those rules might not be as helpful as they sound.
Steven Siegel and his family pulled their U-Haul up to a warehouse stocked with everything they'd need to start over. They're roughly 12 miles from where their home in Altadena burned last month in the Eaton fire. As they pulled in, the warehouse volunteers welcomed them with a cheer.
Oh my God. Are you kidding?
They got a couch, a dining table, toiletries, everything except, of course, a house.
We are planning to rebuild, just mostly the deal we made with the kids was we'll give them this house, and so we want that house.
Literally that house, a copy of the 1912 home they lived in for 20 years. Siegel has a couple of incentives to build something new that's substantially equivalent, as California law puts it, to what was there before. One is money.
You have to build the same house or else your property tax goes way up.
Yeah.
So, and our house was really perfect. It was really perfect. So
the other incentive is time. If fire victims build their new houses in roughly the same footprints as the old one, the state lets them bypass the months-long environmental permitting process.
Now, that all sounds all fine and dandy, and you feel like, oh my God, everybody's going to be able to build really quickly.
But there are a couple of big caveats, says local architect Dan Brune. One person asked him to rebuild a decades-old Cape Cod-style house, but with more flame-resistant materials.
You can get a version of that today, and I have some clients that we are doing things like that. It is costly. So costly.
Plus, some of the houses that were there had wooden shingles and wooden shutters. Even some wrap around wooden porches.
We shouldn't have built those to begin with. Those shouldn't have been built there. You're in Los Angeles, in Southern California, not the Northeast. So that worries me big time.
So to rebuild faster, you have to build the same house, but you might not be able to afford it, and it might burn, just like the old one did. Which is why some building professionals are thinking bigger picture, how to design neighborhoods that are cheap and quick to build and are more resilient for the next wildfire. Ben Stapleton leads the nonprofit U.S. Green Building Council, California.
One of the things I'm trying to work on right now is can I get some folks together to do like some pooled purchasing, group buying for things like clean concrete or steel or wood.
The idea is get a bunch of fire victims together to buy sustainable materials, and their homes are cheaper and more resilient. Good for the planet and for the victims waiting to move back home.
At the end of the day, what we shouldn't be talking about is hey, these are going to be more sustainable, resilient homes. What we should be saying is these are going to be built cheaper, faster, and safer.
Faster, but still not fast enough for architect Dan Brune. He proposes designing a few model home templates for victims to pick from, houses that can be built quickly, cheaply, and sustainably, then mass produce them, like Ford did with the Model T.
That's what we need to be doing. We have this amazing opportunity. Why should we be going back?
All of this talk of rebuilding is still up against a labor shortage. Los Angeles contractors mostly renovate homes. The county doesn't have nearly enough who know how to build new ones from the ground up. In Los Angeles, I'm Kaylee Wells for Marketplace.
Coming up,
you can order supplies, including Botox, filler, things like that, on the internet.
Not just anybody, to be clear. First, though, let's do the numbers. Yeah, the Wawa's. Dow Industrial's down 193, 0.5%, finished at 43,239. The NASDAQ, hang on to your hats, down 530 points, 2.8%, closed at 18,544. Thank you, NVIDIA. The S&P 500 sank 94 points, 1.6%, 58 and 61 at the end of the day. We get PCE tomorrow, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, inflation Fed style. So, some consumer-facing stocks. Why don't we? Kohl's, which recently announced it's cutting 10% of its corporate workforce, down 4.6%. Walmart up 0.6%. Best Buy down 2%. Bond prices fell. Yield on the 10-year Treasury note rose 4.26%. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by Solidigm. Today's AI ambitions require a different approach to storage. Solidigm offers solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. StorageForAI.com. And by the Marketplace newsletter. No jargon, no hype, just smart takes on the economy. Marketplace.org/subscribe. And by Cencora, bringing the companies and capabilities of AmerisourceBergen together under one new name. Cencora empowers healthcare partners with custom strategies to elevate patient care and accelerate positive outcomes at Cencora.com.
Support for WNYC comes from Intrepid Travel, a B Corp offering small group trips guided by local experts. Travelers can see the Tuscan countryside by bike, share tea with a Berber family in Morocco, or cook with locals at a Costa Rican farm stay. Learn more at intrepidtravel.com.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, New Jersey Congressman Frank Pallone, he's the ranking Democrat on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is now being asked to find $880 billion in budget cuts. The committee has jurisdiction over Medicaid, Medicare, energy, and environment policy. We'll ask how he thinks they should do it or how he'll resist. Also, 100 years of the Oscar for Best Picture. The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC. In the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered, staffers of the Department of Government Efficiency resign in protest, saying they won't use their skills to dismantle government services. We'll have that and more at 7. Stay tuned.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. Here's a story from the Time and This Economy Are a Flat Circle department. 3-ish years ago, we were spending a lot of time on this program talking about all the things that had resulted in a serious shortage of new cars. I am reasonably sure you don't need a reminder. But all that stuff that happened 3 years ago is making some used cars more expensive today. That's according to Edmunds, which says that in the last quarter of 2024, the price of 3-year-old used cars, the relatively few that is, that were delivered during that shortage, their prices were up more than 3%. Here's Marketplace's Henry App.
Traditionally, a 3-year-old car is kind of the gold standard in the used car market because 3 years is often the length of a new car lease. So when leases are up and the lessees get in their next vehicles, their old cars hit the used market, says Jonathan Banks at JD Power, and there's a lot of demand for them.
It's usually like lower mileage. It's usually in pretty good condition because when you have a lease, you know you got to turn it back in, so you take good care of it. It's just like a really, really nice car.
The problem now is 3 years ago,
leasing went away effectively. And so those lease maturities that you normally would see coming back from 2022 new vehicle sales, we're just not seeing any.
The new car market in 2022 was kind of a mess. Supply chain snarls limited new vehicle production, but demand was high. And so Ivan Drury at Edmunds says dealers stopped offering inexpensive lease options.
They just took those away. There was no need for them to essentially juice the sales, as we call it. And people had to purchase.
And when drivers purchase a car, he says, they typically keep it longer.
So what normally would have just shown up at the dealership in 2 or 3 years is now going to take probably 6 or 7 years.
Taking away that supply puts upward pressure on used vehicle prices, which already have been pretty high since the shortage of new cars drove a lot of new car buyers to the used market. And supply problems on that used market aren't likely to go away, says Kristen Gicek at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago.
It's like this big rat that has to go through the snake, I guess. It's going to take years before we really get on the other side of it.
Until then, for people looking for that 3-year-old off-lease car, the market's going to be tough, Gicek says.
We've seen dealers, they say they're getting hits on cars that have, 100, 120, 130,000 miles on them.
Normally, that's not a hot item, but take what you can get, I guess. I'm Henry App for Marketplace.
I was perusing Bloomberg Business Week the other day, as one does, when I saw a piece that kind of stopped me. It was about a kind of business called a med spa. Businesses that, it seems, are flourishing right now. 6 times as many of them in 2023 as there were in 2010. That's according to the American Med Spa Association. Amanda Mull had the story. She's a senior reporter at Business Week. Good to talk to you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
I will confess to not having been familiar with the phrase med spa before I came across this piece you wrote. What are they?
Med spas are like a middle ground between a hair salon or a nail salon and a dermatologist's office. They are usually storefronts in strip malls, all over the place that provide a slew of aesthetic medical services, I would say.
Give me a for instance on the services.
Botox is a huge one. You also get things like dermal fillers, so lip plumper. You can do laser hair removal. And then there's some things that don't require medical intervention. A lot of them also offer like eyelash extensions, microblading for your eyebrows, all kinds of different things.
I've never understood that microblading thing, but that's a guy speaking, I suppose. Who works inside? They're not doctors. Are they doctors? I don't know.
It depends on the state. Regulation for these types of businesses is done at the state level and varies pretty widely depending on where you are. But most states, what you're actually going to find is they can be run by nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, registered nurses, and even in states where these services need to be supervised by a doctor. Mostly when you go in for a service, the person who's going to be treating you is going to be a nurse.
Why are they then, as you point out in your piece, proliferating so greatly?
Well, there's a combination of reasons. One thing is that a lot of the types of services that they offer have gotten a lot better over the past 15 years. Pharma companies have gone sort of all in on developing these treatments. So there's a really wide variety of them available now. And a lot of people are aware of them thanks to reality TV and social media that wouldn't have necessarily been otherwise privy to all of these options. On the provider end, med spas are almost entirely cash businesses. You don't have to deal with insurance. So if you are someone who can inject medication, which is pretty much any doctor or nurse, then you can move over to this business, make like really good money, and get rid of a lot of the stresses that might exist in more traditional medical practice.
Sounds like barriers to entry are pretty low.
Yes. One of the reasons that these have popped up in so many places is that it doesn't take a lot of startup capital to start one. If you have the correct medical licensure, then you can, open up a storefront or rent a salon suite, and you can order supplies, including Botox, filler, things like that, on the internet, as long as you're licensed.
Oh,
yes.
all right. Okay. All right. As long as you're licensed.
And once you sort of, build up a following, you have people who are coming back pretty regularly for treatments that they pay for in cash.
The catch, of course, is that this is a these are businesses based largely on aesthetics, and aesthetics, as we know, change, yes?
Yes. The med spa look shall we say. It is.
Wait, now you have to describe the med spa look.
People can sort of pick out the types and number of treatments that you've potentially had based on what your face looks like. The overplumped lips, the ultra smooth, wrinkle-free skin. It is like sort of a tight, waxy kind of look, or it's lumpy, depending.
Wow. Without getting too personal here, did you partake of services? And without specifics, again, were you generally satisfied as you were reporting this piece?
It's been kind of a long time since I've partaken in any med spa services. Not that I judge, but I did many, many years ago get some laser hair removal and was a little bit unsatisfied with that. I was in college, so this was like the mid 2000s. There are many, many generations of laser that have been introduced since then, and a lot of people seem to enjoy their results.
Amanda Mull, senior reporter at Bloomberg Business Week, talking about med spas. Amanda, thanks a lot. Good to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance. Progressive is currently looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who are interested in building a career and joining an inclusive and unique culture. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers. And by NetSpy. Cyber threats evolve fast. NetSpy helps companies keep up. From pen testing to proactive security, and with clarity, speed, and scale, NetSpy helps protect some of the most trusted global brands at netspy.com.
This final note on the way out today, in which our work here at Marketplace is almost done. There's a new Harris poll out, done for Bloomberg, taken February 6th to 8th if you're a detail person. Here's the headline. 59% of Americans think tariffs will raise the cost of everyday goods. That is the right answer, by the by. 15% say they won't have an impact, and 11% say tariffs will lower consumer prices. Like I said, we do still have some work to do. John Buckley, John Gordon, Noya Carr, Diantha Parker, Amanda Petra, and Stephanie Seek are the Marketplace editing staff. Amir Babawe is the managing editor, and I'm Kai Rizdal. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APM.
WNYC is supported by Othello, now on Broadway. Denzel